Welcome to BlackUSA.news morning show. I'm your host, William Honolulu Jr. Join us as we explore the news and opinions that impact our community. We break down how the major stories have a very personal, local, and racial impact. No topic is off limits, but even if the conversation gets rough, we're always going to keep it real. Greetings and salutations, all my people out there in internet land. I am William Honolulu Jr., and I have the privilege and honor of serving as the host of the Black USA News Morning Show. Welcome to April 1st, 2022. Today is the first day of National Stress Awareness Month. Stress negatively impacts the Black community tremendously. There have been studies on the impact of racism and stress, the impact of stress on diabetes, and a lot of the comorbidities that occur in Black lives. So what we're going to do is throughout this month, we're going to talk about what we can do to reduce stress. So as we go along throughout the month, be prepared to enjoy those things. As always, I want to give a big shout out to the super producer, Kyle Crazy Horse Morgan, who is always holding me down. It is amazing to have a squad of people with you that are really helping you take it to the next level. So I am so grateful to have him in this place and in this space. I also want to give a big shout out to our assistant producer, Brandy Raymar. Thank you very much for all that you do. She's been helping us put together some really quality programming for you guys for the rest of this month. It's going to be amazing and awesome. As always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe because that helps the channel and helps us get ahead of the algorithm. It also helps us know what it is that you like so that we can continue bringing you the type of content that you want. All right, so today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to bring one of our guests back, and first time we talked to her, we talked a little bit about what it's like to be a Black woman. But today we're going to talk about employment. We're going to talk about what it is that we need to do to make sure that we're in the best position to get jobs, let me take that back, not us, but our kids. See, we're right around the time where a lot of parents and students are planning to move on to campus and planning for campus in the fall and getting their last things prepared, leaving high school and those types of things. But there are a lot of questions that they forget to ask during the college tours. There's a lot of things that they don't think through as they are preparing for their careers while they're in college. So what we decided to do is to bring you all an expert to help you all understand what it is. And that gives me the opportunity to reintroduce you all to Dr. Michelle Talbert-Horsey. Hello, Doc. How's it going?
Oh, I'm doing well, William. How are you?
I am doing pretty well. So one of the things that I want to make sure is that people understand that I'm not just bringing anybody to them to help educate them on how to help their children along through this journey, because that's a really big deal. I've had 2 kids to put through college, and they did a wonderful job, but it was scary along the way. And there were a lot of things that I learned kind of later on during the process that I really wish I had known in the beginning. There was even a big difference between when my oldest son went to college and my youngest son, because we knew some more things. And so I wanted to make sure that we brought somebody to the table who could really speak to those types of issues. So if you could just tell the people a little bit about yourself and how you've worked in higher education, what you've done, I think that'd be really helpful.
Okay, so I have 23 years of experience in higher education. I started off in an academic trio program as an academic crisis intervention counselor.
Mm-hmm.
From there, I moved into academic advising for liberal arts students at the University of Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
And from there into career counseling and pre-law advising, again for the University of Pittsburgh.
Okay. So
I'm sorry. So now I sit as a director of career services for Harrisburg Area Community College.
Okay. So you and your department are really responsible for helping students kind of plan their academic lives and their personal lives their professional lives during college so they can land the type of jobs that they want.
What we do, really a better way of phrasing that, is we help students find their why.
Okay.
Why are you here? Why are you attending school? Because for some students, it's just an automatic. I finished high school, you go to college. just what you do. And
Right.
no one ever asks them, well, why are you going to college?
Mm.
What are you trying to achieve? Yes,
Mm-hmm.
you may want a degree, but what kind of degree? You want a BS? You want a BA? What are you looking to do with that degree? What are your next steps? So when kids come out of high school, even though it seems odd to ask a 17-year-old, a 16, 17, or 18-year-old, plan your life, look forward 5 years and tell me where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hard question for adults to answer, let alone asking a 16, 17, or 18-year-old,
Right.
a teenager,
Mm-hmm.
to answer that question. But it's still a question that needs to be asked.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you doing this?
Mm-hmm. And so, is it? Let me switch to something. One of the things that I find a lot of times is that when you ask kids these types of questions, they don't know, but they're not comfortable saying they don't know. So what they'll end up doing is they'll just repeat something someone else told them, like, "Oh, you'll be a good. I think you'd make a good doctor or a good scientist because you like playing, whatever." And then like, "Oh, okay, so I'll be a scientist," and that just kind of is it. Or I love fire trucks. One day I saw one and I fell in love, and now I want to be a fireman, or that kind of thing. Um, and so they come to the table with all of these whys, but they're not comfortable saying, I don't know. How do you help them get comfortable with that?
I break it down into smaller chunks. First of
Mm-hmm.
all, I let them know that it's okay not to know.
Okay.
And it's okay to change your mind, even if you do know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's perfectly reasonable. It's expected that you're going to change your mind. Some people change their minds. Some students change their minds 6, 7, 8 different times before they still graduate on time, but
Mm-hmm.
they change their minds frequently. So what I do when I work with students is I share stories with them, stories of students who have changed their mind, changed their majors, stories of students who were undecided for a semester or two before they chose their major. And again, helping them to understand that it's all normal. I think
Mm-hmm.
at its very core, students don't want to seem like they're doing something out of the normal. They want to be
Mm-hmm.
normal. They
Mm-hmm.
want to be like everyone else. If my friend knows what he or she or they is doing, then I too should know what I'm doing.
And not realizing that all the time everybody's just saying what somebody else told them to say.
And
Aside from the few that really do have it planned, most people are just guessing.
well, even when I was an academic advisor, one of the things that I would do with my students, and I think one of the things that made me such a good advisor, is that I would ask students why they were choosing certain classes beyond just I need a history class to fulfill the general studies requirements, the general education requirements. But why did you choose the history of Russia for example? Why did you choose that class? Why are you choosing this psychology course? What
And
is
most of the time it's like, well, it met the requirements and it's available at the time that I have.
and
I
I
mean, if we're going
wouldn't
to be honest about stuff, that's a lot of times. I know when I took classes and asked my son about his, it was it time fit and I needed it.
but I wouldn't let it go with that. I would
Okay.
interrogate it because and here's why. What I'm looking for is the thread. What is the thread that's linking these things together? And the reason why I look for the thread is because that thread is going to help to inform what your academic major is going to end up being.
Hmm. That is true because a lot of people get, they, especially those who are not set in their career or set in their majors or whatever, they take classes in different subjects that they like and then start realizing, well, they have sometimes it's a function of time where you get close to the graduation. It's like, okay, where do I have the most credits? So where that's my new major. Have you seen a lot of that?
You're always going to get that. You're always going to get I need to take any class to fulfill X requirement. I
Mm-hmm.
tried really hard to make sure my students weren't in that situation
Mm-hmm.
because the other reality is when you're just randomly picking things, that's when you don't do quite as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have to keep an eye on that QPA. Now,
Yes.
some of this is slowly
Wait,
changing.
wait. Some of the things, some of my audience may not know what a QPA is.
A quality point average or a grade point average. Some schools go by grade point average. If you're planning on going to graduate school, that QPA or GPA is going to play a significant role. And if you're going to a top tier school, a middle tier, or a lower tier school. Now, it may also play a role in a type of internship. They may an employer may use that as a sorting mechanism to try to separate the okay students from the stellar students. So you got to be careful in just randomly picking a course.
Okay. So that's some really good information, and that's kind of on the professionals helping students, really digging in and focusing in on helping them find their why. Let's take a step back and talk about, sometimes the issue is just you start with a tremendous level of ignorance, and I'll use myself as an example. When I started school, I wanted to go to med school because I wanted to be Dr. Honolulu. Like, I just wanted the title doctor. I wish it was a little more, highbrow or something honorable, but I just wanted people to call me Dr. Honolulu. And so after my first semester, I was telling some of my friends my plan, because I was going to go to med school. I didn't want to practice medicine, but as long as I got the doctorate, I could do whatever I wanted. And one of them told me about this thing called a PhD, and I literally remember saying, "What's a thud?" And I was like, and because I'd never heard of it, I didn't realize. I thought my principal was a medical doctor who decided to be a principal. I thought that somehow in medical school they imbued you with all of this stuff, and you could go and do all of these jobs. It never occurred to me that there were even different things in the academic sector that I should be looking at. And so sometimes you start with kids who just have no bearing, and their families may not have told them or may have just assumed that they knew. How do you work with, how can parents help get those students, help them prepare more so that when you get them, you can make their transitions easier and help them figure out their why?
Well, one of the things that a lot of schools are beginning to do is post, for lack of a better way of putting it, like their language or their terms. Because one of the things we realize when students come to us, as you just mentioned, what is a QPA? What is a GPA? A lot of people don't know what that means. When we talk about semester this and quarter that, and a lot of the language that we use that is very integral to how we do our work in higher ed, a lot of folks, they come in, they have no idea what we're talking about. A lot of the acronyms that we use for things, they have no idea. And it's going to be different for every school. Every school uses a different list. So first thing I would tell, the very first thing, if we back up even a little bit further, this first thing is attend your orientation. Don't blow it off like, oh my gosh, you're just going to be a bunch of people talking to me. Attend your orientation. That's the first thing, because a lot of times that list of understanding the language is posted somewhere in the orientation information. So that's the first thing. Second thing, be curious. Be like a little 5-year-old child and be curious about everything. And don't be scared to ask questions about everything. Anything that even sounds remotely interesting or it may even sound off. Don't be afraid. And I would say this to parents as well. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And don't be afraid to stop and say, I don't understand what this means or what this is. Ask questions.
Well, sometimes it's also, you brought up wonderfully at the beginning that sometimes the challenge is that students want to be normal. Well, sometimes parents want to be normal too. Like, I think sometimes people forget that many of us have no idea what we're doing. And even worse, sometimes we think we know based on our experience, but we don't realize that intervening 20 years may have changed a thing or two. And so I really do appreciate you reminding parents to be curious as well, and to recognize that some of this will be uncomfortable.
And things change in higher ed too. Some things are new for us. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to contact your orientation leader or the orientation host or facilitator even after the orientation, and say, you mentioned this during orientation, especially if you're in a group orientation and you may, like being back in high school, no one wants to be the person who raises their hand to say, I don't understand what this is.
Right.
You can do it after the conversation is over in a more private one-to-one setting and say, I attended the orientation, but I'm not quite clear on what you mean or what you meant when you said this. And that's perfectly acceptable. Parents and students need to understand that we are here to help. We're not, it doesn't behoove us to confuse you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We're not trying to confuse you. We want you to attend our school. And we want you to be successful, because successful students mean successful alumni, successful graduates mean successful alumni.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what we're after. We want to have successful alumni for a number of different reasons. That's a different conversation.
Yeah, that's a different show. That's a different show.
That's a different show.
So one of the things that I want to know is, like, what is your advice to students who are here and they are going through the orientation and all of these words, all of these other people, all of the new smells, the food, the people, the hormones, the newness, the fear, the anxiety, all of these things are coming together. What do they do? How do you recommend that trying to navigate remembering to ask questions, to ask the good questions, and still, because one of the things we are talking about this month is stress. This entire transition is stressful for everybody. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the strategies that you recommend to help people deal with that type of transitional stress?
First of all, is again that goes back to the why question, understanding your why. And for many students, at the end of the day, no matter what they end up majoring in, they may be attending college. Like I said, for many, it's because they want to find a really good job at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And understand that the orientation and everything that comes along with that, the registration process, the advising process, is just what it is, a process. It's just literally, I tell my students, handle what you can handle. Break it down into smaller, manageable chunks for you, not for me, because what I can handle may not be what you can handle. Right. So break it down into small chunks. The other thing I tell students is to write things down. Students have to find their voice. And this is where parents play a really important role. Mm-hmm. Because many of our students come from families where they were told not to question things.
Respect your elders.
Respect your elders. Don't question things. Just figure it out later. No.
Don't make a scene.
Don't make a scene. No, I'm not advocating making a scene.
Right.
What I am advocating for is for parents to give their kids permission to use their voice. And the reason why that is so important, especially from day one, is because students have to own this experience, because it's their experience. It's their process. And there are going to be times where their parents are not going to be able to advocate for them. The student is going to have to advocate for themselves.
Absolutely.
And they have to learn how to do that. One of the most challenging things I've seen, and where a lot of struggle comes in, is students learning how to advocate for themselves. And we spend sections. I used to teach a freshman studies class and master student classes. And one of the things I would talk about is how to talk to your professors. How many
talk about why that's important?
Well, how many students get to the end of their class
Mm-hmm.
to come up to their professor to say, help me, I'm not doing well. Well, you weren't doing well back in October during midterms. And that's when you should have been, that's when you should have been talking to your professor,
Well,
not
let's talk
December
about that then.
when the finals.
What about the embarrassment? Like there, that's a really big deal for some of these students to deal with, especially those who may have not had academic troubles to begin with, like in high school.
Yeah.
And they make it to college and they start hitting these walls. At what point are these? Because they may have experienced the same thing in high school, like a little hiccup, you have a bad test or whatever, and you have enough time to recover because they give you a slew of grades. I actually did not realize how important a lot of grades were until I made it to college. But you don't have that same thing in college. So how do you start figuring out when to start using your voice? When, because I know for the first couple of years, and I love talking about this because I can use myself as an example. I didn't start getting to know my professors, and I thought it was really weird because I still had the high school mentality. Like, why are you hanging out with the grown-ups? Like, what are you getting? Like, it's like hanging out with my mom's friends. I had no idea why anybody would do that because they were just teachers at the college. But help the parents and some of the students who are going to be watching this, help them understand why that's important.
Again, it's important because first of all, your grades are important.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important that you understand that that teacher is there to teach and to support. That's their job, to teach and to support. Their job is not to trip you up. They're not trying to trip you up. They want to see you in their office. That's why they have office hours. They want to see you. I can
Some
tell,
of them.
well, I can tell you in my experience talking to professors, especially professors that teach very large lecture classes, they always say, the students that come to see us on office hours are the students that are getting A's, which is fine. But the students that really need to see us, the C, D, you're not looking like you're going to make it through this class level student, are not coming to see them. And it could be, as what you said, it could be because people are ashamed. It could be that they are embarrassed. For some students, it's because they have never hit the wall before. What I do as an advisor, when I had students come to me and they were like, this isn't working out. What's going on? I remind them of a couple of things. One, that their identity is not tied up in their grades.
Well, why not? Because I give you this pushback because for some kids, they say they are, because if I don't keep a 3.5, 3.0, whatever, I lose my scholarship. Like, and they, especially those who have been excelling and not bothered, but excelling throughout their high school time, they have been defined by grades. So what do they get themselves defined by?
Well, what I mean, when I say defined by their grades, an A does not make you necessarily an A+ person. Doesn't make you, because you're getting a C, doesn't mean that you're somehow a failure. Even though I know that for some students, getting that C grade is a failing grade. It's failing for them. And I'll be honest with you, for some students, they need to get that C grade because they were fooling around, and that's why they got the C grade. But you asked me a question about talking to professors and why that's so important.
Right.
It's building that relationship. You have to build that relationship for a number of different reasons. One, it's because the professors are there to help you. And if they can have a better understanding of who you are as a student, they can help you better understand how to study for their course. I've had professors actually look at students' notes and say, you're taking notes incorrectly for this class. You're looking at the wrong things. You need to be focused on this, and this, not what you have written down. That's why there's a disconnect.
Okay.
So they need to make that connection. The other piece is mentorship.
Okay.
Professors can act as mentors.
Now, what's the let's make sure they understand what, because some of some people who are listening have been in these programs that are called mentorship programs, but they've been more like summer camps or, church camps, and haven't really had a strong development component to it. So make sure that they understand what you're talking about when you say that your professors can serve as mentor or serve in a mentorship relationship.
And what I mean by mentor is someone who can help to guide you.
Mm-hmm.
And in this context, academically and perhaps even professionally, this
Mm-hmm.
is someone you can go to that can tell you the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between those different things about what your path could possibly be if you're taking X route. They can also help you when it comes to um, writing letters of recommendation. If you're going
Mm-hmm.
to graduate school or you're applying for a fellowship or you're applying for something, a different type of scholarship, and you
Mm-hmm.
need to have an academic recommendation, you can't get it from someone who doesn't know you. You have
And actually, let me tell you from personal experience, trying to get one from somebody who doesn't know you does not go well.
no,
Yeah.
because they don't know you and they don't feel comfortable. And it's not, and if they write one for you, they're doing you a solid, to be quite frank, because they
Mm-hmm.
don't have to do that. Even if they do know you, they don't have to do that. That's not a part of their job.
Mm-hmm. And if you get one from someone who doesn't know you, it'll tend to be generic, like, oh, Dr. Michelle Talbert-Horsey was in my class from this date to this date. She took this class, and her grade was an A. But we had no issues in her record. And that's a different recommendation to I've had an opportunity to work with Dr. Talbert-Horsey on a number of projects. I've seen her develop and grow. I've actually seen her work on some of my projects, and I absolutely recommend her for whatever. Those are not the same.
No, those they're absolutely not the same. And they as the kids say, it hits differently.
It hits differently.
It hits differently. And having these relationships with your professors can also help you to navigate the higher ed system. Higher ed is a system.
Mm-hmm.
Some people may not like this, but it's a business.
It is. And sometimes you're the customer, and sometimes you're the product. So just be careful about that. So you said that one of the big things that parents can do to help their students is to get them to learn how to find their voice and advocate for themselves. So and you also talked about finding mentors to help you kind of navigate the academic spaces. What about the kind of that hidden curricula, the nonverbals, the more social aspects of our professional lives, those cultural norms? What happens if how you show up and who you are is inconsistent with the social norms? Because we have a lot of students who, they may not. I went to school right down the street, so I can visit a couple times before I got there. But I know people who have, they weren't. A friend of mine, their kid went to Alabama A&M. They didn't have the resources to go down there and visit. They took virtual tours, did all their research, knew that they liked the school, but that was the first time she ever saw the campus. So if those are the cases, how do you change yourself, or do you try to adjust, or what do you do when who you are doesn't fit the culture?
Well, that's when there has to be some growing pains.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be some growing pains there. I don't recommend that anybody change who they are as people,
Right.
because that never works. And then you're going to be unhappy with the college selection because you're still not going to fit, because it's never going to feel right for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's when you really start engaging in the college culture.
Okay.
Join an organization. And I
Okay.
would tell students, don't be afraid to join even as a freshman. That's okay. You don't have to take on a leadership role, like be the treasurer or the
Right.
secretary or the president or vice president of an organization necessarily your first year, but join an organization. When I transferred to no, when I started a 2-year institution,
Mm-hmm.
and I joined an organization. And I was never like in high school, I really wasn't a joiner. I didn't really join organizations. And I just started talking to people. I just started having conversations with people, and this organization happened to be presented to me. And I was like, okay, I'll join. And I ended up taking on a leadership role in the organization. It wasn't on purpose, but it ended up, it definitely wasn't on purpose. But I ended up meeting Constance Morella. Do you remember Constance Morella?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, she attended one of our events, and I ended up meeting her and a couple other state representatives and some other people because of my position in the organization. And it helped me quite a bit. It helped me on a personal level because it helped me to access my extroverted side. I'm a very introverted person.
Okay.
And that helped me to find my voice because I was speaking up and speaking out. And so when I transferred to my four-year institution to UMBC, University of Maryland,
Big
Baltimore
up UMBC, go Trevers.
Yes. When I transferred there, I was able to really navigate the transfer student space because sometimes transfer students get lost because it's like, oh, you transfer. Okay, here's your packet. Here's your welcome packet. And there you go. I must say that UMBC did a really good job with their transfer program.
Yeah.
They had us in 2 days worth or 3 days worth of voluntold programs that we had to attend. There were a couple sessions, like you could choose between sessions, but basically it was you're voluntold, you had to participate.
Right.
And me being an introverted person, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want all of this forced kumbaya business.
Yeah, mandatory fun.
Mandatory fun. But it was. I met people in those sessions that even though we weren't friends, I met a young woman. We weren't friends. We didn't talk, but we did an exercise in one of the sessions where you had to find someone that had the same birthday. And every year, for some reason, for 2 years, every time we saw each other, we would wish each other a happy birthday. And that was our connection. Every year, we remembered each other's faces, and every time I saw her on the quad, we would reach out and be like, "Happy birthday!"
Right, but it's those type of organic things that really make the difference. And a lot of times, students feel overwhelmed by their expectations and their ideas of what the social pressures or their uncertainty about how to engage. How do you recommend parents and also students deal with, again, the stress of it all, just the newness and the overwhelm?
Well, there is going to be a certain level of stress because you're going into a new environment and you don't know what to expect and what's going to be expected of you. And whether or not you're going to be able to meet those expectations, especially when you're starting college. You've left your boys, your girls, your team back home, and now you're basically put into a situation where you have to build a new team and you have to redefine yourself. You do it very simple. It's actually a really simple response to that. And that is you just put one foot in front of the other. You don't have to be everything to everybody. And I would encourage parents to make sure that they're sending that message to their kids. You don't have to be everything to everybody all the time. You don't have to be on all the time. So when you get your schedule, you set up your study schedule. What works best for you? Now, it may take a couple of weeks before you find out what your flow is. And that's okay. It's okay not to have a flow your first week or your first couple of weeks. Your first month, you're going to have a flow. Now, you may have to tweak that flow as things progress and as you grow. But be comfortable, and you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Because things are always going to change in college. A class change, hell, opening or closing a new dining hall I remember they changed some stuff on the omelet station. Literally, I changed my schedule to make sure I was there for the omelet station for the next semester because it was that amazing. Okay,
And
that I wasn't the hero in that story. Never mind. I'll take that story back. My bad.
see, for me, it was the Belgian waffles. It was the
Yo,
Belgian waffles for me,
okay,
in the warm syrup.
if we're not going to talk about it, let's be clear. When I went to UMBC for the college tour and they took us to the cafeteria and it was like, get all of the cereal that you want. And I was like, so I could just keep coming back and getting it. Wait, I could do this every day? See, we were deprived. We only got to eat bran at my house because we had a history of colon cancer. So I wanted, I was excited about the cereal, but it was little things. And like, when I went to Livingston College with my church in the college tour, the Qs were having, it was like, I think Omega Week or whatever. And it was so robust. And those are the types of things that really ended up impressing me. And a lot of the stuff you're talking about, I was one of the kids. I just had to go to college. Like literally, they threatened me. Like my parents and my aunt, godmother threatened me that if I didn't go, there was going to be problems. And so I didn't have a lot of these tools that you're talking about. And I'm grateful for you and people like you for helping students to try to navigate this space. And kind of going to that vein, you've already talked about working with professors, and I'm assuming TAs and professors are in the same vein, but talk some more about the services that are available on campus, because actually it took me getting involved in some of these organizations to even know that some of the stuff was out here. So educate the people, please.
Well, there are lots of different things on campus. Make sure if you're going on your campus tour that you're asking about things like tutoring. How is that made available? Is it virtual? Is it a 24/7 type deal? Is it all subjects? Is it only a few subjects? If you are a science major, you may want to know if they have chemistry and bio tutoring services. Or if math is not your favorite subject, like it is not my favorite subject, you want to make sure they have math tutoring available. You definitely want to make sure that they have a career services office on campus. And how robust is the office? Meaning, can they give you some program outcomes? They may not be able to tell you where every single sociology student has found a job, but they may be able to tell you where the liberal arts students are currently working.
Right.
Are they transferring? And I'll take it a step further. If you are majoring in something like sociology or psychology, whatever you choose to major in, don't be afraid to go directly to the department. And to some schools, the faculty members actually are the academic advisors. Talk to your academic advisors. Find out where their students are going. If they say, well, the majority of our students are going to graduate school, okay, that's fantastic. What graduate schools are they going to? And do you happen to know what they're studying when they're going? Because that's going to give you some clues as to what's going on with that major.
Right.
If you, for example, if you are a psychology student, and you want to practice therapy, but you notice when you're asking for outcome data that none of these folks are ended up being therapists, they're teaching or doing something else, that's fine. That's perfectly okay. But if you want to be a therapist and most of these folks are going into teaching, that's telling you something about the program.
And so
think about that.
So one of the other things too is that actually talking about career services, because I know that, you know what, let's put a pin in that because I want to follow up on that career services. We're going to put a pin in that. Okay.
The other thing I want to mention is that some schools have care centers or centers on campus. So, or places where you can go if you have a need, if you need, some campuses have clothing closets. So if you have a clothing need.
Wait. Don't say some campus. Tell them what you did. Tell them what you're doing. Go ahead and tell them about that.
Well, I'm in the process of developing a campus closet that's going to provide professional attire for our students who need it. So there are lots of campuses that offer, lots of four-year institutions have campus closets or something similar.
Hmm.
So check that out, especially if you need professional attire, because that's something that when you go to school, you're not thinking about bringing a
A
suit
couple suit, yeah.
or
Some
whatever,
shoes.
or shoes. You're not thinking about that because that's not what you're thinking. Use the campus closet. There are other schools that have, I know at our campus, we have something called a care center to
Hmm.
help students who have food insecurity. So we had that available. Other schools may have something very similar to assist those students who may be living off campus to meet that you're having issues with food insecurity or having
Hmm.
issues with transportation. Find out what those services are so you can, because you may be eligible for those
Right.
services. The other
Right.
thing I would tell people to do is, if be friends or become friends with your financial aid office.
Oh,
If you're
please and
receiving,
thank you.
if you are receiving financial aid, if you're not sure if you qualify for financial aid. Now, I've never worked in financial aid, so I'm going to stay in my lane. But what I will say is, when in doubt, you can always fill out the FAFSA,
Hmm.
the federal application for student aid. You don't, if you are awarded funds, you don't have to take the funds, but you may, if you are getting financial aid. I will say this: you do have to pay back loans. So be very careful in terms of how much money you take out.
You ain't never lied.
Make sure you take out what you need, not what you want.
And also, as we're talking about that, get somebody to help you think about what that return on investment is going to look like. Because honestly, had somebody really helped me understand, like, okay, this is the type of job you can get, and not some fantasy type of job. Because remember, we had this one guy, one of my mentees at Morgan. He told me that because he was a black man who was going to graduate with a degree in engineering, he was going to come back out and he was going to come out in the late early 2000s making 80,000 a year, and it was like, no, you're not. But since nobody had talked to him, everybody had always hyped him up. Oh, you're a black man, you're doing all this stuff, and you're smart. He really thought that he was going to come out making a certain amount. And one of the things that career services offices can help you with, especially when you're thinking about planning out how much money do you take, how much money do you take out in loans and scholarships, and also thinking about how much time you're going to be there, what type of internships. Being able to talk to a career services professional becomes very helpful, because for a lot of people, that is the end goal of going to college. There are very few people that I've come across who went to college just to learn. It was like, I went to learn to do this, or I went to learn so I can get this job. And so starting with or integrating career services into your entire academic career, it sounds like it makes sense to me. And I'm assuming because you're in charge of a career services office, you would agree. And besides, we talked about this beforehand, so I know what you're going to say, but still tell them.
Well, I would say that one of the things that we are starting to do more of
Mm-hmm.
is really get into that financial conversation with people, because
Mm-hmm.
some folks really do have the fantasy of. I remember working with a person.
Mm-hmm.
He came into my office with his girlfriend. His girlfriend was in social work.
Okay.
So she was pretty set on what she thought she was going to make.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to go into corporate law.
Mm-hmm.
And he thought that he was going to work 40 hours a week in corporate law and make 100,000 plus a year. And I had to explain to him that that's not how that works.
They're trying to get it to work like that now, but damn sure it's not even there anymore. I mean, it's not even there yet.
No, I was like, you're going to work more than 40 hours a week in corporate law.
Absolutely.
And especially, or anyone, if you're making 100,000 plus a year, you're going to be working more than 40 hours a week. Because his thought was, on the weekends, I'm going to have uh, a cabin up in Seven Springs, which is a mountain resort in southwestern Pennsylvania, and I'm going to visit. I said, you may very well have that. She will be visiting that on the weekends. You too may visit, but you'll be working.
Yeah, like hold on, babe, hold on. Give me. Let me get off this call. Okay, I got a follow up call. As soon as I get it, just me and you on the slopes, real quick. Actually, you just go ahead and start dinner. I will meet you down there. Oh, I'm gonna be there in time for dessert. Well, at least I'll see you when you get back.
But I find that that's part of our responsibility in career services. It's not, I hate to say that we're the bubble bursters because we're not trying to burst your bubble,
Right.
but we want you to really have a realistic thought process around realistically how much money are you going to make? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we can't we don't have a crystal ball, so I can't tell you you're going to make
Right,
66.
but you can give some point of best information. You know where to get the information from.
We can give you a best estimate. This is
Mm-hmm.
probably how much you're going to start with. But
Mm-hmm.
then you also have to look at, and we're getting more into what is your need? Because if you need to
Mm-hmm.
make X or you want X type of lifestyle, what I have found more so,
Mm-hmm.
especially working with freshman students, and I make this joke, but it's a joke, but it's not a joke.
Right. I got a couple of dollars. Yeah.
You have, I mean, if you want to live a Gucci lifestyle, you can't make Poochie money, so you really have to think about, and I'm not saying anything is wrong with living a Gucci lifestyle if
Mm-hmm.
that's the lifestyle that you want to lead. But then you also have to think about the types of careers that types of careers that the students were thinking about going into wouldn't support that type of lifestyle.
Lifestyle.
So
Right.
you either have to change your career path
Mm-hmm.
or change how you're viewing your life, change from Gucci to Poochie
Right.
and make it work.
And it sounds like a lot of this is about just really teaching kids or adults, hell, everybody, how to make these types of life decisions. Because a lot of times, to the point you made earlier, a lot of these kids don't have a lot of experience advocating for themselves, making any type of decisions. I have one of my friends, her son has to call her anytime he goes to an office someplace. Put me on speakerphone, tell him you could talk to me, and then it's like, dog, like and she's like, he's learning, blah blah blah. But I'm like, to talk back and forth to you, okay, but to need you on speakerphone for damn near every meeting, especially when you're complaining about it, that seems like a bit much.
We've had situations, not at my current place of employment,
Mm-hmm.
where I used to work. We would have, in one of my prior positions, we had situations. Now, I haven't heard about this in recent years, but some time ago, we had parents that wanted to be on interviews with their kids, and they would be on the interview. Now, I have heard of parents trying to sit in the background on Zoom calls.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't do that. What message is that sending to the employer?
Not just the message to the employer, because the alternative is like, well, they'll never know. But what it does is, while you may think it's making your child comfortable, and for some people it might, but what it also does is it means that they will always need a blanket in the room with them. What happens when life goes back to real life and you can't come into the room with them? How are they going to manage that?
Well, let me be very clear. The parents were actually answering some of the questions.
Oh, it wasn't just like sitting in. It was like
No,
feeding them answers.
they were sitting in to say, well, say you're asking me a question, I respond, and then my mom jumps in and adds on to that response.
Oh, nah,
So
go ahead. Go ahead. For real?
it was quite literally a three-person interview.
That's crazy.
You can't do that. You really have to teach parents really have to let go, even though it's hard. I know that it's difficult. You have to start, even now, if they're juniors in high school, seniors in high
Mhm.
school. Yes, they're teenagers. And yes, you have to stand behind them and look over their shoulder, but
Mhm.
at least start pushing them out there some
To make some decisions.
to make some decisions. Now you're
Mhm.
there to catch them if they trip and fall, and that's what you're supposed to do.
Mhm.
But it's okay to push them a little bit to make some decisions on their own. And I'll be
Mhm.
completely transparent. I have a 16-year-old who has decided that he wants to have a gap year.
Mhm.
Which
What's the
some,
gap here?
well, a gap year is a time between high school and starting college where students take some time off,
Mhm.
usually to work in an internship
Mhm.
or volunteer work. He's using that time to try to figure out what it is he really wants to do.
Okay.
Instead of going to college directly and floundering because he's not sure about what he wants.
Mhm.
And it's not that I'm pressing to say, you need to know exactly what you want to do. I've even
Right.
said, when you go, you may not be 100% sure until it's like starting a job. And let me be very transparent about that.
Mhm.
Like starting a job. You don't know if that job is a good fit for you until you
So you
actually
start
start
getting it.
working in that
Yep.
position.
Yep.
You could have the best interview. They could be the nicest people. You may be the nicest person, and it seems like a fit because an
Mhm.
interview is nothing more than a conversation. And in this
Absolutely is.
conversation, you seem like it seems like it's a really good fit, but you don't know if it's a really good fit until you start doing the work.
Mhm.
And you're there every day, or if you're working hybrid, you're there 3 days or 2 days or whatever your situation is.
Right. And so that is a really great point on not understanding the environment until you get there. So how should students try to navigate the perspective, like those expectations? Because a lot of them have watched movies or have older brothers and sisters or have visited colleges and have expectations of what life is going to be like. How do we help them shape either more realistic expectations or recognize that the world needs to be more fluid because this is a very fluid process?
I think it's through having conversations with them.
Okay.
It's about making it okay. It's about making it okay, as we said earlier, making it okay that you're not. It's okay that you're not sure, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not. At least for me, when I work with students, I try to steer them away from comparing. I see this as a journey.
Mm-hmm.
This is a journey. It's a 4-year journey. And for some people, if you're going to get your PhD, this may be an 8 or 9 year journey.
Absolutely.
So this is a journey. This is not something that's going to be won overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Are you competing? You're competing with yourself to some
Right.
degree. Um, and not to compare your journey and yourself with what other people are doing.
Well, honestly, that's difficult to do because everything we read tells us to compare ourselves.
Exactly.
If it's not a 40 under 40, it's the 20 under 20, it's the, you know, out, magna cum summa, the person of the year. It is all of these things. It is how much do you make? It is every social function. And so I think some of the things, especially as we're talking about stress, is how do we handle the fact that people have expectations of us. The school has expectations of us. And part of the like this academic hazing ritual is how do we learn to navigate these expectations and prioritize them? Hell, some of these same parents we're trying to get to help support the students. They are some of the sources of some of the most stressing expectations. So how do students really start to have that conversation and start really picking themselves?
I think I think you just said it. You have to really prioritize yourself.
Mm.
You
What
have to
about, but everybody says when I do that, I'm selfish.
No
I'm
such.
ungrateful after all they've done for me. I should be more grateful. If it wasn't for them, I
Yeah.
wouldn't be here.
And no one said this journey was going to be an easy journey. Higher ed is, it's not easy. No one
Mm-hmm.
real This is real life. This is not the movies. This is real time. This is
Mm-hmm.
real feeling. This is if you're first gen, it's even probably more difficult because a lot of people's expectations and it's their hope. It's not their
Mm-hmm.
hope and dream for you. It's their personal hope that they have for themselves. They're putting them on your plate
Right. Absolutely.
that you now have to manage their feelings.
Mm-hmm.
How I work with students is I focus, and what I think made me such a great academic advisor is that I focused on them. And I would
Mm-hmm.
ask them, I said, what do you want? What do you want to do? Because when we started this conversation about the why,
Mm-hmm.
many of these students have never been asked, what do you want? But when you ask them that question, many times they have a solid response to what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it's a matter of connecting the dots to get from point A to point B. Because
Right.
they have point A and point B, they just don't know how to connect them
Right.
together because everyone else is jumping in trying to tell them what to do. I don't know if you remember this author. His name is Elon Harris.
Yeah.
He passed away many years ago.
Yeah.
I attended a talk that he did at Carnegie Mellon University,
Mm-hmm.
and it was during Black History Month. And he was talking there weren't any students, talking to a couple of graduate students. He was talking
Mm-hmm.
to a room of academic advisors and other folks, that student affairs folks, people
Mm-hmm.
who basically work with students. And he said this, and I'll never forget this. He said, I tell students to listen to the snow. And we were like, what do you mean, listen to the snow?
Yeah. Okay. I'm with you. I know. What do you mean?
The snow, do you hear snowfall?
Sometimes I think like when it's really big and heavy, but
I
like
guess
that's not regularly.
he's talking about regular snow.
Huh.
If you're outside, you're listening to
That's interesting.
listen to the snow. Try to block out, don't listen to the rain because the rain is loud. The rain is everyone else in your ears. What he was saying was
Mm.
the rain is everyone else in your ear telling you what to do.
Oh,
Listen
you
to
know
the
what? I apologize. I have to stop real quick. For those of my listeners who are in Florida and Southern California, snow is frozen precipitation that comes from the sky onto the ground. I know, and especially all people in Arizona, you may not have seen this before. So I'm just like, I just wanted them to know what that was. They may never have seen
but that's what he said.
it.
And so even when things get loud for me,
Uh-huh.
I stop and I think, let me listen to the snow.
That's really cool. That is
Let
really cool.
Yeah, I was, and everyone in the room, when he said that, everyone was kind of like, huh. Because he talked about parents and people being as a student, you have all of these people in your ear constantly, and that's the rain. You hear the rain, you hear the thunder, and that's all you can hear when it rains is you hear the rain hitting the side of the building or the windows.
Mm-hmm.
All you can hear. But that snow is your inner voice. It's that inner sound. It's
Right.
you. Listen, basically what he was saying was block out
So you.
everything else and listen to you. What do you need to be successful? That's
Mm.
another question that I ask my students. How can I help you be successful? Help me to
Mm.
help you. What do you need? Because I can tell you by looking at your classes and having this conversation with you, we need to have a plan for tutoring. We need to have a
Right.
plan for this
Right.
and this. But what do you feel you need?
Right.
How
So
are you doing?
yeah, like all right, so you realize we're gonna have to come back and have you do this again. Okay. So like let's just get that out the way. because I didn't realize we ran out of time. I was looking at the clock like, yeah, ding. We had a good old time. That's what happens when you talk to good people, boy. You forget what time it is. So can you promise our audience commit to coming back and helping the kids and the kids in college?
I love it. This is my passion. So if your audience would love to have me back, I would love to come back and talk a little bit more about how I work with students and some of the things, some of the missteps I've seen
Please.
students make, and some of the missteps I've seen parents make. I mean, I had a kid almost smack their parent.
Oh yeah,
So
because you but that's a whole other show. It's a whole other show. You about to get me fired up. I'm gonna call a kid and cuss him out real quick. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Okay, Doc. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm looking forward to having you on again. Cool.
sounds good.
All right. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye. Dude, didn't I tell you I know dope people? I know some of the dopest people, and we're going to continue to work to help you and your kids get the resources they need so that they can be successful academically. Thank you very much, and we will be black tomorrow.